Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode on the show. I'm so happy to have you guys here today. Once again, today we have a very special guest, as always. We only bring special guests to the show. You guys know that. And today we have uh, Cody on the show. Cody, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dominic. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
All right, so our guest today is an award-winning author, editor, publisher, and literary community builder whose work explores resilience, identity, and resistance in worlds where truth is constantly under attack. His LGBTQ science fiction series, Resonant Earth, and his debut novel, Broken Mirror, examine alternative realities where neurodivergence, power, and survivor intersect in thought-provoking ways beyond writing. Cody is deeply committed to fostering literary culture through publishing, editing, and producing writing events that help authors and readers connect. Cody, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, and I feel like that was an introduction that I'll always remember. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, and I'm glad you enjoyed that introduction. So let's get into the questions I have for you. Your debut novel, Broken Mirror, imagines a world where the protagonist neurodivergence is criminalized. Where did that idea come from, and how personal is that story to you?
Yeah, it's very personal. So when I was a teenager, I had a cousin a few years older than me who was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and he was an amazing artist. Like the things that he could draw were imaginative and vibrant, and like they were really arresting. So I always kind of looked up to him for his like artistic talent. But over the years, he faced a lot of problems related to his condition. He was estranged from his family and became institutionalized in California, and that's where he passed away. And so the, the feeling that was left with me alongside grief was really a question about our society and how we um, penalize and stigmatize people whose minds work differently, and how we kind of fail them at a very basic level in terms of care and sustenance. So those were the kind of background feelings I had much later in life when I started writing Broken Mirror and the Resonant Earth Quartet, which is all about how people with divergent minds are criminalized, and the main character has something called mirror resonance syndrome, which is thought to be kind of a degenerative condition, and kind of a sentence that starts out with surveillance and then moves into forced medication and then confinement and ultimately death. So his situation and prognosis is very dire, and he's desperately searching for a cure, and that's what the series traces, is his journey looking for a cure to mirror resonance syndrome. And I just want to add the core question at the heart of the series is whether a cure is needed, like whether this is something that will help him live his life better, or something that's like an even worse option. And that's what's really at the core of the final book in the quartet, which comes out in October. The title is Toxic Medicine, and the toxic medicine that the title refers to is this cure that he uncovers, and the question of whether the cure is something that he should take for himself and administer to others.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Cody, for that wonderful answer. So, Broken Mirror is celebrating its 10th anniversary, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah.
Looking back, how have you grown as a writer since publishing that first novel?
Oh, that's a great question. In a lot of ways. So on a very basic craft level, I think I'm much more aware, when I'm writing, of structure that I'm aiming for. So a lot of novels in particular, we work with three act structure, especially in the West, and there are a lot of conventions that go along with that. And I think now I'm much more aware of the conventions, and I'm daring in trying to subvert them consciously. So structure's one way. I mean, I think my writing at a sentence level has also improved. I'm much more aware of the mechanics that I have to play with and the tools in my toolkit, so to speak. But I think there's this one very kind of, call it like hazy improvement, or it's hard to pin down, which is about, I think that I'm better now at having a clear message that I want to communicate through my fiction. And fiction's a very different animal when it compares to nonfiction or journalism, where in fiction, what you're trying to communicate is both an experience that the reader can move through, as well as underlying ideas that you want them to grapple with. And in particular, my fiction, sometimes I call it cautionary utopian fiction, because the setting of these books imagines some ways that society has solved some of our problems, and others where we want to be very careful about going in a particular direction. Mental health is one of those areas where the solutions that are being put forward to help people with mirror resonance syndrome are harmful in some ways. And another way is that there's this, especially as the series goes on, there's an increasing threat of a new technology kind of taking over the American Union of Nations, which is sort of an alternate history version of the United States. And the backlash that technology creates is a key theme in the final book, which, as I mentioned before, is coming out in October.
Okay. Thank you so much, Cody. Your book, I can see you are very, very passionate about writing. That's correct. Mm.
Absolutely. and
So,
and oh, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, you asked me about how my writing has evolved over the years. I think one thing that has helped immensely in my own work is working with other authors as an editor and book coach. When you work with so many manuscripts from many different authors, you start to learn patterns. You start to see many ways that writing can move from the draft to the final version and how to improve it. And it's just one part of my career that I'm really grateful for, is being able to work with so many different authors to help them improve their manuscripts and bring them out into the world.
All right. Thank you so much, Cody. So, you have described your fiction as living in the uncanny valley, both familiar and unsettling. What does that mean? And why are you drawn to that style of storytelling?
Okay. I think I have a two-part answer. So, number one, growing up as a queer kid in the San Francisco Bay Area in the 80s and 90s, on one hand, it was a wonderful place to grow up. It was relatively liberal. It was also not truly accepted to be gay and out. So there was a fundamental kind of mismatch between, it's what an ideal place to grow up as a kid, and this still very real stigma that existed at that time. And so I think that mismatch, or that uncanny feeling where things are good but they're slightly off, kind of carried forward in my artistic career as a writer. And I love that feeling when I'm reading a book of where things seem to be going well, but you have some doubts, and that's something that I try to replicate in my own work as well. And honestly, I forgot what the second part of my answer was, but I remember. Yeah, I mean, one thing I really like to do with my writing is pull in near future technology that we see coming to our world and pull it into the fictional worlds that I'm creating. So in this fourth book coming out in October, there's this new brain implant technology. It's a chip that people get implanted in their brains that allow them to talk to AI totems, they're called, but they're basically, like life coaches. And this technology is taking over the country. Like people are getting it, even if they don't have any pre-existing mental health issues. And it's a kind of a metaphor for things that we see happening also in our world. But that's that uncanny valley for me is both a feeling I want to induce in the reader and also this question of an uncertain future and bringing in examples of a future in ways that it could go right and ways that it could go wrong. And that feeling of unease that creates.
Okay, thank you, Cisco. So, how do you write neurodivergent characters in a way that feels authentic without reducing them to stereotypes, superpowers, or tragedies? I mean, that's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I draw a lot from my own life and experience, from the people that I know and care about, and the people that I see and follow. Um, and everyone's experience is different. So I'm not trying to represent a certain type of neurological condition. I'm hoping that the fictional neurological condition that I've created in this series, I'm hoping that anyone can find something in it that they recognize. So when I put this together, I borrowed elements from schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, dissociative disorders, and a few others, ADHD, autism spectrum, and the idea is that like I'm not trying to represent any one of those conditions, but I want people to empathize with and maybe even see themselves in the characters who have this fictional mental condition. I think that's one way that we can build empathy when we read is when we see ourselves, identifying with the character in some way.
Okay, so Cody, as a developmental editor, you have helped many writers strengthen their stories. I have a story too. I hope you will be able to help me strengthen it. Okay, so
Absolutely. Let's talk later about that.
how has editing other people's work improved your own writing?
Yeah, I think it's in several different ways. One, some of the pitfalls that beginning writers face in particular, I know that I faced and worked my way through. So one of the big challenges is as writers, we're developing a story, we have these ideas in our head, and we try to put it down on paper. Um, Often there's a mismatch between the story that we have maybe developed in our minds for a long time and what goes on the page. And that comes down to missing details or of setting or of action, or of description. Sometimes authors struggle to put the emotions that they know the characters are feeling, but they struggle to write those emotions in a way that that the reader recognizes or the reader can then feel. So that's one of the challenges is there's this mismatch between what's in the intent of the writer and what makes it onto the manuscript page. And then the other one, and I mentioned this earlier, is really about structure. One of the tricky things to learn as a writer is how to bring the reader along on a journey of anticipation and discovery. And it seems very natural when we experience it as a reader. It's a story that like we can't stop turning the pages. We stay up late at night to find out what happens next. We know it when we feel it as a reader that there's momentum and that we're engaged and we want to find out what happens. Making that happen in the story from a craft perspective is challenging. You have to lay in, certain details. We call those hooks. Those are hooks that pull the reader along, that relate to, what the characters want, what the obstacles they face, etc. So I think that's another one of the big challenges is building that structure into the story that pulls the reader along toward, a big a big climax and a satisfying resolution.
Okay, Cody. So,
I would say there's other things I've learned too, which is about somewhat about the process of creativity. I think that one of the one of the core values that I have that I try to work with or keep in mind as I'm working with writer clients is to follow our inspiration and creative spark.
hi, Cody. Are
There's
you
a
there?
feeling that a writer gets when they're tapping into something that they really care about. Maybe it's a message or a scenario or even just a character or a scene. But there's this feeling of exhilaration, honestly, when you feel like the words you're putting down are the right ones to convey what you're trying to convey. And I think it's really important for beginning writers to listen to that feeling. Often writers will try to write towards what they
Joshua.
think the market wants or what they think a reader will want, and it may come out, somewhat stilted or generic because they're writing to this ideal rather than following a creative inspiration. So part of what I've learned and part of what I hope to convey to my clients is that following that inspiration through line throughout a story is really important, and it's how you stay motivated to do something which is quite a feat. When you're talking about writing 100,000 words and making it into a coherent story and like having polished language that can meet readers' expectations, there's a lot baked into a successful novel, and it takes a lot of perseverance to go from a blank page to a finished book.
Your novel serves as cautionary tales while still offering hope. How do you strike that balance?
Yes, cautionary tales while still offering hope. Yeah. Well, how do we continue in our lives day to day when our circumstances are challenging? I think that we all learn at some point in our life that we need to keep going, right? That sometimes when it's hard, we have to believe that there's a better day waiting for us. So that's what I try to write into my stories, is to make the stakes real, to make them feel very challenging for the characters. For Victor, what's on the line? He's the main character in the series. He's trying to find his freedom after being criminalized for the way his mind works. But he's also trying to help other people like him. So some of the other mirror resonance syndrome patients are comatose. Some of them are confined into essentially camps. And so what he's working towards is a way to help them. And that means, the stakes are kind of high. It's not just about himself. It's about this entire community of people who are very vulnerable. And, I think that we need to feel like there is the possibility that things will improve. And one of the best ways to have hope is actually to create it, to work towards something, to not just sit back and feel that maybe someday some things will get better, but to work towards them and to engage in that act with others and to, stand up for what we think is right and work together to achieve it. So it is a balance. I describe my books as very dark. They're not cozy at all. And they deal with a lot of heavy topics. But I think even in that darkness, there's friendship, there's love, there's working towards common goals. There's self-improvement. I think there's a lot to find hope in if we look for it.
Okay, so how has Los Angeles influenced your writing, not just as a setting, but as a creative environment? People say your environment helps your creativity. Is that true?
I think so. Yeah. This is I mean, of course everyone around the world has an idea of what Los Angeles is, that is primarily driven by Hollywood and television and all the images and stories that play out on our screens. But living here, you come to find that it's much more, and it's, you know, it's one of the most diverse places on the planet. It is somewhat idyllic in terms of the environment. You know, we don't have snow in the winter, and you know, it's not as hot as the tropics, but yet we still have disasters. You know, we lived through a horrifying tragedy last year with the fires in the Palisades and in Altadena, and I'm sure the listeners have seen some of those images. But you know, the community here is still scarred from those experiences and still rebuilding. And so, I guess to get to your question, it's an incredibly creative book community here. Through my small business, Bookswell, which is a media and events literary company, I get to work with so many authors through the WeHo Read series and through other series. And, you know, it's never a challenge to find a great writer here. You know, poets, novelists, creative nonfiction writers. I mean, there are so many great authors here that that it feels like, you know, if you actually can't keep up with it. One of the things that Bookswell does is maintain a list of literary events that are happening, and on any day, you know, we publish at least 6 or 7 that are going on, and we're not even tapping all of them. So it is an incredibly book and writer rich environment, and there's no shortage of inspiration from each other and from what's happening around us. So that's been great. I've been really happy to be able to be part of that and be in community with so many people.
Okay, Cody. So, what advice would you give aspiring science fiction writers who want to tell meaningful stories while still entertaining readers?
Hmm. I mean, start writing. There's no better practice than actually doing it. And, you know, be easy on yourself at the beginning. You know, it takes time to develop the craft, um, and one of the best ways to do that is to share your writing with other writers and get feedback. So when I was starting out, this was back in, well, about 10 years ago or more, actually, because Broken Mirror hadn't come out yet. I was just working on the manuscript. There were writing groups here in Los Angeles that I joined and helped organize, where we would meet once a week on Saturday morning at the basement of our local library. And, you know, we would all share pages and read each other's work and respond to it, telling each other, you know, what we appreciated about it and what needed to be improved. And that act itself, you know, over time developed a kind of editing muscle, I would say, that got, you know, worked and improved and strengthened. So, you know, advice is get started, find writers to be in community with. It's great to have writers who are at the same part of your journey, you know, the same stage, or even slightly advanced, so you can learn what they're learning about the publishing process, and know that it is a very welcoming community. There are so many resources out there for writers. It can feel lonely, but that's only if you haven't scratched the surface. Underneath, there's so much like love and support from book lovers and other writers. So yeah, I would say, you know, dive in as much as you can. Oh, and read. Read what you love. Read what inspires you. Um, I'm looking at my bookshelf right now, and there's so many authors there that that I admire and whose books just bring me, to other worlds. And yeah, read deeply, I think, is probably the other thing I would say.
Okay, Cody, thank you so much. My final question for you is this: what do you hope readers take away after finishing your book?
Ah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's a thriller, so I hope they feel like it's a wild ride. Um, and I hope it encourages them to ask questions about the world that they're living in and why things are this way. Um, you know, in addition to being a thriller series, the Resonant Earth Quartet is also an alternate history series. And one of the reasons I wrote it that way is that I think that um, looking at the choices that society has made in the past can help us think about how the future can be better and can maybe help us push towards a better future for everyone. So, if there is darkness, I hope there's also hope as a takeaway for readers.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today. Your work reminds us that science fiction isn't just about imagining different worlds. It's about helping us better understand our own world through your writing,
Mm.
editing, and commitment to building literary communities. You are creating spaces where important conversations can thrive. On behalf of me and my audience, we wish you continued success with the Resonant Earth series, your publishing work, and your efforts to support writers and readers alike. Thank you for being with us today and have a wonderful day ahead.
Dominic, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful conversation. I appreciate it. Take care.
All right. All right. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Bye bye.